see. Here it is. Ann Arbor Incident. Read all about it. I don't know. It's coming out in the fall, I guess.
Hey everybody. Hope all is well with you and that things are cool in your world. Wanted to talk to you guys today a little bit about the Ann Arbor Incident. That's the book that Gigi and I were working on together before Carnival of Excess. It was kind of the first big project that him and I were working on together. So, but before I get to that, I want to just take a minute and thank you guys for giving up your time to watch this stuff and for subscribing and liking and commenting and all that stuff. I really enjoy reading the comments and seeing what you guys have to say about all this stuff. So also, you know, by liking and watching this stuff, it keeps me motivated to keep telling these stories, as long as you guys want to hear them. Anyways, all right. So the Ann Arbor Incident was this book project that Gigi was working on while he was incarcerated up there in Michigan. Now, when I first started reaching out to Gigi and we first made connections, of course, this was after the Harbor Club show. That's where I told you guys that's the first time I'd seen him live. So I saw an article in CMJ, College Music Journal, a publication that used to come out. And there was a little article in there about his hunger strike when he was in jail. And it had an address. So I wrote to him. At the time, I was working on doing a fanzine, and it was called the Gravyorm Diary. And I wanted Gigi to be, an interview with Gigi to be the first, you know, for the opening issue. So I got in touch with him, and I explained to him that I wanted to do an interview that was a little more in depth than a lot of the interviews I had read with him. Most of them were, you know, pretty on the surface type things, or either yes, no, and I kind of wanted to get a little more in depth with him, and so we talked about that a while, and he was into it, and you know, I'd sent the questions, and he hand wrote all this stuff back to me, which was really cool. Did a really in-depth interview. And so as we got to talk and got to know each other a little more, he told me about this book that he had been working on. And, you know, at this point we were familiar with each other. I'd helped him with press releases and some other stuff. So he had gained a certain amount of trust, I guess, in me. So he told me about this book called the Ann Arbor Incident, and which, as you guys may figure out from the title, it was all about what led him to being incarcerated, not just the little stuff. This was his prison sentence that was, I believe the official charge was assault with the intent to do great bodily harm or something like that. Anyways, so he wanted to write a book talking about all this stuff, and he'd been working with somebody, at least this is what he told me, inside, that had been, you know, who knew how to type in a computer, and evidently he had access to a word processor, some sort of computer or whatever. So he had been working on this thing with this person, and it was all about the story of what led him getting tossed in. And you know, there's accounts of this stuff on the internet that you guys could probably find, and I'm not going to get too much into the gory details about what happened, but basically what it was is there was an individual, a woman who kind of, you know, she kind of hooked up with Gigi and actually set some shows up for him in, I can't remember if it was Ann Arbor or maybe it was Muskegon. I can't remember. But she had, you know, kind of been palling around with him in the Disappointments and set some shows up with a show with I think it was at a university, if I remember correctly. And, you know, you can only imagine how that went. But, you know, the 1989 tour that Gigi did with the Disappointments was pretty intense. I mean, he would often tell me that it was one of the most of his career. and the most brutal in rock music, according to him. And judging, I saw him on that '89 tour, and it was pretty rough. Anyway, so what happened was that this woman kind of wanted to be involved with Gigi, and she hung around with these guys, and there was a lot of pretty unsavory stuff, as one can imagine, on a Gigi Allin tour and all that went with it. And in particular in 1989, Gigi was under a lot of duress for, he was running from the cops, and, I think at that point he had talked about unaliving himself for his last show, and, so there was a lot that was going on with Gigi, not to mention all the booze and the substances and just everything. It was a pretty tough time. So she got involved with them, and it was there was a particular night. I guess it went on for a night, maybe a day or two. I don't know. And again, this stuff probably is out there on the internet. I'm not going to talk too much about the activities, but it was pretty unsavory, pretty rough stuff. And Gigi maintained the whole time that it was consensual, and that even afterwards that, she was in touch with him, still wanting him to marry her, and even like sending scabs to him in the mail and stuff like this. So again, when you talk to Gigi, or when I was in the process of doing all this with Gigi, I had the written transcript. I talked to him. I never really specifically talked to him about the incident itself. In other words, I didn't say, well, tell me some of the graphic, gory details or whatever. I mean, it was all in the book, so I didn't really need to hear it from him. Now, whether all that stuff was, fact, fiction, somewhere in between, I don't know. As we know, it went through to the courts, and they didn't like it, so they tossed him in jail, and that's why he ended up there in Michigan. So the book, I delivered the transcript of the book when I went up to North Carolina when Gigi was doing the vocals for the Anti-Scene album. That was primarily the reason that I went up there. I wanted to deliver this transcript to him. And then also, I did the big photo shoots and whatnot. I think I did 3 of them, the acts, and then the ones with the Anti-Scene, and several in the living room where he was being interviewed. So I took a bunch of photos that week. Or weekend, I should say. But the most important thing was to deliver this transcript. I had it all printed out and bound up to into a book form for him. So I was delivering that to him, and incidentally, that's where we came up with the idea for Carnival of Excess, because I was pitching to do an acoustic only record with him that weekend too, but that evolved over time. Now, the Ann Arbor Incident, as it were, so the transcript was all done, the book was all done, he had a proof copy. Gigi and I, we came up with the idea to do Carnival of Excess, so the Ann Arbor Incident kind of, it ended up kind of falling by the wayside a little bit as we were, for the next couple months. That was in May in North Carolina, and then July he was coming to stay with me. So we were really focused on getting the bones together for Carnival of Excess. We really didn't talk anymore about the Ann Arbor Incident. All that stuff was done, before I got to North Carolina. Now, in terms of all the right, polishing up the transcript, typing it out, etc. So, I didn't write any of the book. There was a person that Gigi was working with inside. And one day I got a call, and this is before the North Carolina, so when we were putting all this stuff together. And Gigi was like, okay, I want the author to be this guy named Louis Maffa. And I said, okay, well, that's weird. I didn't know why he wanted that, but whatever. So that's why, if you've seen the flyers, and here's one here, that it always says by Louis Maffa. That was a name Gigi gave to me. I had no idea if that was a real person, something he made up, whatever. As it turns out, he wasn't satisfied with the writing of the person who was inside working with him. And maybe that's why I wanted to title it that. But anyways, so as things kind of rolled along, so the Ann Arbor, Gigi had a bigger vision of this book, whereas the Ann Arbor incident would be the middle portion of it. There was three, he wanted this book to include 3 parts. The first one was a book that you might have seen it called America's Favorite Son, that's been out there, and that was written by, he was working with a dude named Terry Snyder, and this was kind of starting from his childhood. And that what Gigi told me was that Terry, and I don't know if he's still with us or not, but Gigi told me he got sick of Terry. He drank too much and just couldn't, which was kind of funny, but couldn't complete the task or just didn't like it. So according to Gigi, he went up there because Terry was living in Michigan. And when Gigi was paroled to the Y, he said he went up there and kicked his ass and took the transcript. I don't know if that's fully true or not. Whatever. So the first one was that, and when it was put out, it was called America's Favorite Son, and then it was going to be that. Then that left off right where the Ann Arbor incident picked up, and then there was a third part of this that was a kind of a tour diary, and you might have seen that out there too. That was from when Gigi got out, through, doing some of the live shows. So when we started out, it was just going to be the Ann Arbor incident. And then as time evolved and he got that transcript from Terry, and then after he got out and did the tour, then he wanted to do this as, all 3 stories put together in one. That never happened. It never, the Ann Arbor incident has never been published. When we started getting deep into Carnival of Excess, again, it just kind of went by the wayside. And at that point, I was just helping Gigi, facilitate, or, I wasn't looking to try to get a publisher with him like we were at first with the Ann Arbor incident. I was more focused on Carnival of Excess, audio and video at that point, less about the book. I'll be quite honest with you, the book was a pretty unsavory type of thing, and really wasn't my cup of tea in terms of what I wanted to release with Gigi. As you guys have seen, the stuff that I released with Gigi was not about the shock. It was the acoustic, it was the country, and even my video footage that doesn't deal with the shock stuff. As I've said a few times, I wasn't much interested in that. So just the way, the universe worked it out to where, Carnival became the focus, and then the Ann Arbor incident kind of dropped by the wayside. And then if I'm not mistaken, Gigi, I think, was trying to find a publisher to put all 3 of those together as one volume, and it just never happened. And then he passed away, and, it just kind of fell by the wayside. So, That transcript is still out there. It still exists. It may see the light of day sometime, but it, I gave Gigi that bound copy. I don't know if it's been copied past that. I have no idea. I kind of washed my hands of it all. And focused on Carnival. So it's out there, and at some point, the world will see it. It will get released, but for right now, it just kind of it sits in the can, as they say. So we'll see what happens with it. But if you have questions about this or Carnival or any of that stuff that I did with Gigi, let me know, and maybe what I'll do is, if you guys want, I'll just do a video answering questions you may or may not have. I don't know, whatever. But I just want to kind of mention the Ann Arbor incident to you guys today, because it was the thing that it was an important thing that Gigi and I worked on for probably, the better part of a year. We were engaged and working on this thing, and I think Gigi just got so stoked with the way Carnival came out that he just wasn't, it just dropped. And at that point, Joe Coughlin was working on a book for Gigi too, and I think the thought process might have been that all three things were going to be wound up and work together with Joe's book. I was on the phone a lot with Joe and talked to him a lot when he was writing that, and we talked about the transcripts and everything else that I had that he wanted to use in his book. Unfortunately, Joe passed away too. So, like I said, if you guys have any questions or anything more about it, let me know in the comments. And who knows, coming up in the future, the Ann Arbor incident might see the light of day at some point. So, I appreciate you guys tuning in. If I went a little long in the tooth on this one, I apologize. I don't script these things out, so I'm just kind of freestyle these things. So anyways, you guys have a great day, and thanks so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it.